Picture a basement in Hawkins, Indiana, November 1983. The table is set for a campaign that never happens. There is no dungeon master. There is no Demogorgon figurine slammed onto the table. It is just empty, silent. And because that room is silent, the rest of the world is about to scream. We like to think of the kids in Stranger Things as the heart of the show, the emotional core, the nostalgia engine. But if you look at the tactical reality of the situation, they weren't just kids. They were an unsanctioned, highly effective intelligence cell. They were the only ones spotting patterns in the static. Remove them from the equation, and you don't just lose the charm, you lose the early warning system for a dimension-spanning biological invasion. Without Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will, the Upside Down isn't a spooky adventure. It is a chronic, festering wound that infects the global ecosystem. Today, we are running the simulation. We are stripping away the plot armor, removing the bicycle cavalry, and looking at the hard, cold facts of how an unchecked dimensional breach turns the 1980s into a survival horror scenario. I'm Tom, and this is Survival Curriculum. Usually, we talk about grid-down scenarios or historical disasters. Today, we are applying that same analytical lens to fiction, treating the lore of Hawkins as a case study in containment failure. We're going to walk through the timeline year by year, seeing exactly where the institutions failed and where the monsters won. We will look at the military response, the biological spread, and the geopolitical fallout of a hole in reality that just won't close. Before we open that gate, I need you to secure your spot in this briefing. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The algorithm hides this kind of content because it scares people. But you need to know how fragile the system really is. Do it now. Okay, let's look at the first domino. It falls on November 6, 1983. In our timeline, Will Byers vanishes and his friends immediately mobilize. In this timeline, Will Byers vanishes, and the system does exactly what it was designed to do. It files a report. It searches the woods, and then, inevitably, it gives up. This is where the silence begins. Let's start with the disappearance. Without the party, Will's abduction is a tragedy, not a mystery. Chief Hopper is still competent, sure, but he's also broken. Without the relentless pressure from a group of screaming middle schoolers, Hopper treats this as a standard missing child case. He checks the ex-husband. He searches the quarry, but he doesn't check the magnetic fields. He doesn't listen to the lights. Why would he? Those are the theories of desperate people. And without the kids reinforcing Joyce's paranoia, Joyce just looks like a grieving mother losing her grip on reality. The terrifying part is that the Hawkins Lab cover-up works perfectly. When they plant that fake body in the quarry, there is no one to challenge the autopsy. There is no science teacher checking the composition of the chest cavity. The coroner signs the paper. The town holds a funeral. Will Byers is buried, or at least a mannequin filled with cotton is buried. And the real Will, he dies alone in the Upside Down. No rescue mission, no CPR in the ashes. He becomes the first confirmed long-term casualty. But his death isn't the worst part. The worst part is that because the case is solved, the town goes back to sleep. The gate in the lab stays open, pulsing, widening, completely unmonitored by anyone outside the government payroll. This silence has a body count. Consider Barbara Holland. In the show, her disappearance was a huge red flag for Nancy. But without the context of the Demogorgon provided by the younger kids, Barb is just another runaway. Teenagers run away all the time, right? That's the police line. That's the narrative. Without the Dungeons and Dragons metaphor, without the concept of the Demogorgon, The people of Hawkins lack the vocabulary to understand what is hunting them. They are fighting an enemy they can't name. Attacks are written off as wild animal strikes, bears, coyotes. The state police come in, set some bear traps, and leave. Meanwhile, the creature is learning. It's feeding. It realizes that this hunting ground is soft. There are no psychic backlash events, no kids with wrist rockets, no meddling teenagers burning it with gasoline. The predator gets confident. And a confident apex predator in a suburban environment is a nightmare scenario. We move from a hidden threat to a series of closed-casket funerals that the local paper refuses to link together. The pattern is there, but nobody is looking at the board. Now, let's talk about the nuclear option. 11. In the canon timeline, she escapes, meets the boys, and learns what it means to be a person. She learns friendship, loyalty, and love. Those emotions are what fuel her powers. They are what give her the strength to close the gate. But in this timeline, she never meets Mike. Maybe she escapes the lab but dies of exposure in the woods. Or more likely, she never escapes at all. Dr. Brenner, Papa, runs a tight ship. Without the chaotic element of the kids interfering, he keeps her locked down. She remains number 11. She doesn't become L. This is a critical distinction to the lab. She is a tool for espionage against the Soviets. They keep pushing her into the void to spy on Russian high command. They don't care about the monsters in the dark. They care about the Cold War. She is treated like a piece of high-end military hardware. But hardware doesn't have loyalty. Hardware breaks. Here is the dark reality of a weaponized 11. Without the emotional anchor of the boys, she has no reason to protect Hawkins. She has no reason to protect our dimension. In fact, her trauma might make her volatile. If she stays under Brenner's control, the gate doesn't just stay open, it gets exploited. The lab likely tries to send teams through. We know from Season 4 that Henry Creel, or 1, is waiting on the other side. If 11 is just a scared, abused lab rat, she is susceptible to 1's manipulation. Instead of fighting the Mind Flayer, she might inadvertently strengthen the connection. Imagine an 11 who isn't a superhero, but a conduit, a battery that the Mind Flayer can drain to widen the breach. Or worse, the lab pushes her too far. She snaps and creates a massive psychic rupture that makes the original gate look like a crack in the sidewalk. We are talking about a catastrophic failure of containment caused by the very people trying to control it. The military tries to weaponize the supernatural, and the supernatural weaponizes their hubris. So, the gate is open. The guard dog, 11, is leashed or broken. What happens to the environment? In the show, the corruption, the vines, the spores, the rot was mostly contained to the lab and the tunnels, but that's because the gate was frequently closed or cauterized by the kids' interventions. Remove those interventions, and Hawkins becomes a biological ground zero. It starts with the crops. We saw the pumpkins rotting in Season 2. That wasn't a fluke. That was terraforming. The Upside Down is a viral ecosystem. It wants to overwrite our reality. Without the kids burning the tunnels, that root system expands unchecked. It hits the water table. It hits the sewage lines. You start seeing toxic events reported in the news. People in Hawkins getting sick with respiratory issues, spore lung. The EPA shows up, assumes it's a chemical leak from the lab, and sets up a perimeter. But you can't scrub this pollution away. It grows back overnight. The physical infrastructure follows the biological decay. Those tunnels we saw the kids exploring, they undermine the foundations of the town. Roads start buckling. Sinkholes swallow cars. Power lines snap as the vines choke the transformers. To the outside world, Hawkins looks like it's suffering from a geological anomaly or a massive subterranean mine collapse. The government evacuates neighborhoods, calling it subsidence, but anyone who stays behind hears the skittering in the walls. The local ecosystem changes. The birds leave. The dogs won't stop barking until they go quiet. We are seeing the conversion of an American town into a xeno environment. It's like an invasive species like kudzu, but predatory and intelligent. By 1985, Hawkins isn't a town anymore. It's a fortress for the hive mind. The library, the school, the mall, they become incubators. And because nobody knows the rules, because nobody has the D&D manual to explain the hive mind, the scientists studying it make fatal mistakes. They treat it like a fungus. They don't realize that when you burn a vine on Main Street, a monster on Maple Street knows you did it and is coming for you. This brings us to the strategic mismatch. The humans are playing checkers. The Mind Flayer is playing 4D chess. The single biggest contribution the kids made was identifying the hive mind. They understood that the army of monsters was actually a single organism. Without that insight, the military and the scientists are fighting individual battles. They kill a demodog and think they've won a skirmish. They don't realize that the dead creature was just a sensory probe. The Mind Flayer is gathering intel. It learns our tactics. It learns that we use guns, that we use fire, and it adapts. It starts using stealth. It starts using possession. In the show, the kids figured out that Will was a spy. They figured out the sauna test to identify the possessed. Without them, there is no sauna test. There is no early detection. The Mind Flayer moves into the flayed phase much faster and much more quietly. Imagine the Billy Hargrove situation, but multiplied by 100. The Mind Flayer realizes it doesn't need to send monsters through the gate to fight tanks. It just needs to possess the tank drivers. It takes over the town leadership. The mayor, flayed. The police chief, flayed. The lead scientist at the lab, flayed. This is the invasion of the body snatchers scenario, but with a hive intelligence directing it. By the time the federal government realizes Hawkins has gone dark, it's too late. The town is fully compromised. The residents aren't dead. They are walking biomass.